Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Group Chat. I am Justin Verrier. Joining me, Big Woz, and live from Minneapolis, Rob Mahoney. Rob, did you get a Nas Reed tattoo before today's game one?
Not yet. Too much of a backlog on those. You really got to wait your turn, but I'm hoping to get it. Do you have any placement suggestions?
Forehead? Is that an option?
Why not?
What's the font choice on the Nas Reed tattoo? It seems a little too simple for a guy that's doing a lot these days.
But I think that's the idea, right? It's a pretty simple serif kind of Times New Roman-y font. Because Nas Reed is a very matter-of-fact expression. Nas Reed.
See, I would go with a old English type of font. You feel me? Like, just go like classic with the tattoos, boy.
Like they have for the Detroit D for the Tigers.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, I like that.
Exactly.
That's nice. Well, Rob, you aren't in Denver right now for this Western Conference Finals matchup.
That's true, yeah.
What a surprise, one might say.
Yeah. In fact, I'm in my hotel in Minneapolis right now because Justin told me specifically, do not do this podcast from the arena. The haranguing needed to be done at full volume in a way that would be unchecked by arena personnel. And look, I dimmed the lighting here in my hotel room. I thought just let's get the mood right if asses are going to be tasted.
Yeah.
Close the blinds. Yeah, I just didn't want you to be on the other end of a very loud berating as like Nickeil Alexander-Walker was like walking by. I thought that might be a little awkward for you. But no,
a little bit.
Guys, I'm going to take the high road here because
yeah, right.
I just, I know it would be a new experience for you guys to have come out on top of this bet, but I'm right so often these days that, there's really not much I could brag about. It's just commonplace at this point.
Are you though? Are your wins really piling up so much, Justin?
And I really just love that because the audience, we don't need to take them behind the curtain too much, but like, trust me, in the third quarter when the Wolves were getting their asses handed to them, Justin Verrier was done. He was defeated. He was like, God damn it. And now like a phoenix, he's, arose from the ashes and he's back.
I will say though, I felt like the Nuggets going up 3-2 was a real test of my conviction. I was down. I had to walk through the river of Styx pretty much in order to come back on the other side. But I found my faith again in a higher power. And that higher power is my takes. So I will never walk away from my beliefs yet again. And, I'm feeling pretty good right now.
I do think that's beautiful. And I'm glad that you've come to a greater clarity with yourself. And look, did Woz and I put a lot of faith in the Nuggets to make the finals, despite all their limitations? Yes, we clearly did. Did they get worked by a Wolves team that absolutely had their number? Yes, also yes. And I think we just got to take it on the chin from that. There's really no coming back from this for us.
It is what it is. However, I take great solace in the fact that the Boston Celtics don't scare me. Not even a little bit. I still feel great about my Celtic skepticism, even if, the past few days have been me avoiding, ESPN and other people's coverage about the Nuggets and what their offseason needs to be, yada, yada, yada. I felt great after watching game one of the Boston series, so I'm not too mad about my own particular take.
Yeah, if we can put an asterisk on this for Justin, he was only kind of backed into the Timberwolves corner with his take because the actual take was you supporting the Celtics and believing that they would go further in the playoffs than the Nuggets. Again, indisputably true. We can't wiggle out of that one.
I will say this, to Justin's credit, his entire bet mostly was like, yes, Boston, I think, is the best team in the NBA, which I think was quite erroneous. However, part two, it was buttressed by the fact that they played in the far inferior conference. So, like, his freaking decision-making was sound in that regard. So we got to give him credit for that.
I'm hearing a lot of like shit sandwiches right now, whereas like gotta give him credit, but 9 different things that he's wrong about, but also you gotta give him credit right now.
Justin is taking the relative high road and we're just digging ditches on the side of that high road and trying to shove him into it.
Yeah, I hope Isaiah is not only recording this, but blogging the various takes so we could bring this back up during the finals. No, I would say that I'm free and clear of this bet, and so I can give just clear-headed analysis from here on out. But I will say we do need to settle said bet, and that probably has become more contentious than the bet itself, believe it or not.
It hasn't really.
I've thrown some ideas out there. Rob has swatted them away like Victor Wembanyama. I thought that they were pretty clever and fun and good for the podcast, but Rob refuses to indulge me.
Those are all extracurricular to the parameters of the bet, which was Woz and I bet you dinner, and you're trying to get me to wear various costumes to the live show.
Well, you also said separately that you would be okay with doing something that benefited the pod. And so I'm trying to come up with things that we could like use for the actual show, because no one's going to want to watch us eat dinner together. I mean, unless you guys want to like feed me one by one. You know?
We're just feeding Verrier grapes as if he's like Nero or something.
Honestly, that could be pretty good for the live show.
True.
But ultimately, I think, Justin, you and I disagree as to what would benefit the pod and what would make us complete hacks. And, you know, some of us are out here trying to be professionals, you know?
Complete hacks. Wow. Yeah. First,
the disrespect of prop comedy. That's crazy.
Well, I stand by that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Rob did take a shot at my various props, likening my humor to Carrot Top, which I took great umbrage with. And so I brought myself a little prop here. I don't know if you could see it. This is what
does it say? Coward tracker.
This is what we're calling the coward tracker.
Yeah.
And it has a little leprechaun with like a pot of gold. Could also be like a bowl of Lucky Charms, if you will. It's really up to the interpretation. You know, I'm an artist, so I think we got to keep track of how many pods we do until you settle this bet. So this is the coward tracker.
We're up to one pod, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are listening in your car, on the subway in New York City,
yes,
on a
podcast.
hike, Justin is holding up a whiteboard that says coward tracker. There's a makeshift picture of a leprechaun, I'm assuming, or someone of Celtic descent. I'm not sure which one. And a pot of gold or Lucky Charms. So, yeah, just painting the visual for the listeners there.
Yeah, the leprechaun you have drawn is very evocative, Justin, of that like late aughts local news story about the leprechaun.
Yeah, you're right. Well, you know, we get our inspiration from various places, you know?
It's true.
Yes, we'll have the coward tracker on hand until we figure out the end of this bet. So it does not end right now. It keeps going.
Of course not. Well, have you given any thought to your cuisine of choice as to where we are taking you to this dinner to settle the bet in part?
You can feed me anything as long as you're wearing a leprechaun costume while doing so.
This was not part of the deal.
All right. Well, we'll give you another podcast to think it over, but the coward tracker is here and at the ready. So, but you were live and in person for the better of the two conference finals game. This seemed like real joy from afar. How was it live?
Oh, this game absolutely ripped. You know, it had everything. It had high level, hard fought playoff basketball, some hilarious moments involving video replay and the announcement of it.
Oh, yes.
A great Minnesota crowd. And I think most importantly, just haymaker after haymaker down the stretch of this game. It was well played for all the reasons that Celtics Pacers was kind of poorly played down the stretch.
Yeah, so I think the big thing coming out of this one, at least from afar, was it seemed like Kyrie and Luka pretty much changed their traditional roles this postseason, where it seemed like Kyrie was very aggressive to start, 13 points on 9 field goal attempts in that first quarter, then Luka closed them out. I think it's going to be pretty tough. We could talk about all the various aspects of this, the absurd amount of three-pointers that the Wolves took in this game, but I ultimately think it came down to the stars just doing enough star shit at the beginning and the end.
Yeah, Kyrie in the first half particularly dropping 24 points. I think he was like 11 of 13 or something ridiculous like that. Could not miss a shot.
Crazy.
And honestly, what struck me the most was thinking back to, last time Kyrie was a great player in the playoffs was 2016. If we're talking about like a long, extended, great run of play, that was 8 years ago. Goddamn, we're old. And his style was just way different. Now, like back then, Kyrie would get the ball and he'd kind of probe and he'd kind of try to find a spot and it'd be this kind of drawn out thing. These days, it's just quick hitters. This guy makes quick boom decisions. They run these quick actions for him. They run some like Dame Lillard type Terry Stott stuff for this dude out of timeouts and shit. I'm just like, yo, this guy has completely evolved his game since getting to the Mavericks. And I know I'm sick of it myself, of the Kyrie love fest that's going on this pod, considering how much I've trashed the guy in the last 2 years. But it's just been incredible to see. And knowing that Dallas has two of these guys down the stretch that they can go to in really tight possessions, man, it's scary stuff.
Yeah, I think we need to ISO on Kyrie for a decent segment here, because not only was he an exceptional shot maker and shot creator, the shots he was getting to, and in particular some of this full court, like dead sprint, left-handed layup with your body contorted, those are not shots that even a vast majority of NBA players can make. The overwhelming majority of NBA players can make. And the fact that he does it and makes it look so easy, I think has clearly incredible basketball benefit for the Dallas Mavericks, but also gave them a way to get behind Minnesota's defense sometimes. And when you think about how they picked apart and how they unsettled the best defensive team in the NBA, a lot of it was Luka drawing two to the ball and finding guys inside, and Kyrie getting behind the defense or weaving among all these bigs and figuring out how to score among all of that Minnesota length.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when Ant was on the dais taking questions after the game. He was talking about what a jarring difference it was from the previous two series to this one, where after the bigs coming all the way up, now they're in drop and like what to do there. I think on the flip side, like the question I think of this series is what are the Wolves going to do against Kyrie and Luka? It seemed like anytime that they were in drop, it just like they were carving them up. The bigs got a bunch of lobs off of it. I think they scored 62 points in the paint. The Dallas Mavericks did. They barely scored any on 3-pointers. I think this was like one of 5 playoff games in which a team lost the 3-point differential by 12 or more and still won the game. But you saw they were successful on blitzes, but was like, how much can you actually blitz for an entire game against a guy like Luka who's finding guys even when you do it?
The Luka matchup presented a major problem that I'm not sure yet how they're going to solve it. One, their size just isn't bothering him at all. In the pick and roll, Rudy's in the drop, Cat is in the drop. Luka's putting the guy, whether it's Jaden McDaniels, Ant, whoever the hell you want to put on him. He's putting him in jail, putting him on his back. And unlike, when it's like Jalen Brunson, or when it's Jamal Murray, and you get the guy on your back and you're 6'2", and the dude behind you is 6'9", he can bother your vision, bother your shot, bother you from behind. With Luka, that is not the case. So the defender that got screened can't bother his shot from the back. Now the big man who's all the way in the drop, Luka's going to make the floater. If he comes up, that's an easy alley-oop lob. If one of the wings help, he's spraying it out to shooters. It's like, fuck. What do you do right now when Luka is this dialed in? He just looked like an absolute maestro out there.
Yeah, and when you think about the defensive matchups for the Wolves, they had some flexibility against the Nuggets, right? They could afford to put Ant somewhere else and then shift him onto Murray late, as they did in the closeout game. I don't think they have the option of putting him on Luka. Like, Luka just bodied through Ant whenever that matchup presented itself. McDaniels at least has the length to recover and get back into plays and contest in a way that makes it hard for Luka. That said, Doncic was just kind of bumping him off too and hitting mid-range jumpers, and you're going to have to live with some of those. I think what you can't live with is Ant guarding him when he just doesn't have the strength to withstand Luka's barrages right now. And if you can't play around with those matchups, and it basically has to be McDaniels on Luka all the time, that means Ant is going to be exhausted in this game because he's going to be chasing around Kyrie for the most part. He's trying to get rid of Derrick Jones Jr. on the other end and then beat the big and then beat the multiple Mavericks defenders who are swiping down and making things hard on him. I think this is just going to be an exhausting series for Anthony Edwards, and that's going to be the reality of it.
He looked exhausted. Reggie Miller on the broadcast mentioned 90 times that he looked exhausted. He played 41 minutes in this game, and it wasn't that long ago that they were just in that big game 7. So it's understandable to an extent, but I think this is why
it doesn't matter.
It does not matter, which the inside the NBA guys really took the Wolves to task for. I think this is why I favored the Mavs slightly when I was talking to Rob yesterday, and he tried to backdoor me into coming up with a take for this series, which I appreciated.
I was having a conversation with you and asked you a simple topical question about the ongoing NBA playoffs.
I know. I also noticed that conversation also took the piss out of me in terms of like how much I was going to really go at the Nuggets thing today. So I see what you're doing.
You know?
No, but I thought Luka would be a different test for the physicality and just the ferocity of that Wolves defense. It's just like, he's just so big. It's like, what can you really do to him to throw him off there? And then Kyrie has that sort of electric style that Murray can do at times, but he just seemed like he was coming and going depending on the health of his leg. And so like, I was actually thinking about this as like a topic to talk about today, like who is the best backcourt in the NBA? And it's not even close. And it's almost like having two dynamic scoring guards now is a counter to what everyone else is doing because everyone's loaded up in the front court.
Well, that only works because one of the dynamic scoring guards is also one of the best passers in the league.
Passers in the game, yeah.
Sure.
If it's just two scorers, it doesn't work so well. And Woz, I don't know how you were thinking about this, but coming into this game, my thought was the longer this thing goes, the harder it's going to be for Luka. And it's going to wear on him over time, trying to score over all of these bigs inside. And you did see that some in this game where he would get inside against Rudy or Cat and try to find a pass and it wouldn't be there. And he was just kind of falling over. Like literally losing his footing trying to find plays. I don't want to overreact to one game, but that's the biggest difference for me coming out of game one versus going into it is now it kind of feels like the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be for Ant to create. And that Luka, his job was difficult. He was hitting difficult shots, but the Mavs just felt like they were getting a little more downhill than the Wolves were for the most part.
I think Luka was just playing with such freedom and he felt unencumbered, right? Like, it's so different to create the shot coming off the pick and roll. And most guys come off that pick and roll and they got the guy behind them. Even when they're much stronger and much bigger, they're flying into the freaking lane. Luka's like, no, I'm going to take my little time with it and get into this little floater, get into this, step back from 14 feet away. He's so calm when he's coming off of that pick and roll, particularly against the drop where the decisions are just right in front of him. It's not something where he has to make a quick read and get off of it. He's just like processing. And obviously he's got a basketball supercomputer and that can happen. Where I think they need to push him into is creating one-on-one. It's just like, you know what? You should have to dribble 7 freaking times, beat the guy, get to your step back, get to the lane, finish over length. I think they should be trying to push him more to that and make it. And again, not creating one-on-one against, Mike Conley or, Alexander Walker or some of the skinny guys. If Rudy has to switch on him, I've seen Rudy do a decent job against him in the past. Switch, he's not going to blow by you. Even if he does get by you, you got the length, you got the size. And I think that's what you got to do because I think that's when Luka has gone down in the past. It's when he's had to do too much creating on his own possession after possession after possession. Today, he got to just play chess with these guys.
And you could see some of that, Justin, in terms of the Wolves clearly wanted to take away the corner threes for the Mavs. Very few of those attempts, which is part of why Minnesota ended up just making so many more threes and attempting so many more threes than the Mavs. But that left open Lively and Gafford to just feast inside so often.
Yeah, so PJ Washington ended up 2 for 8 from 3 in this game. And it was so funny because it felt like he could not hit the broadside of a barn when he was getting above the break 3. But as soon as he got one right in the pocket in the corner, it was like, wow, isn't that beautiful? And also, I think we need to talk about Lively once again, because like he's the vertical threat is just like what's unlocking that extra bit of Luka and Kyrie. It's just like at the beginning of the game, I jotted down, it's like Lively looked like half of Rudy Gobert. Like he's just so thin in comparison to the monsters that the Wolves have. But toward the game there, you saw what his activity and his ability to do enough of passing off of short rolls and whatnot does for that. And I even said this on Twitter that like I think he got a legitimate Kobe assist off of that one Luka off the backboard miss where he just put it back in. And I'm just like, and Ben Cruz even responded that apparently that was in one of his draft profiles. And I totally get it because that's the type of player that he is. He's just like, he does so much off of activity and his ability to just be bouncy around the rim.
He was awesome in this game. And it wasn't just the offense, as you're saying, the putbacks, making himself available.
Woo.
Man, when Cat would try to drive and find something around the rim, and it got to the point later in the game where he would see Lively there and he would already start moving to pass instead. That's halfway through game one. Derek Lively, a rookie, is having that kind of impact on an opposing all-star. Just a massive performance from him, and exactly what the Mavs need from him or Gafford on a nightly basis, but obviously it's even better if you get it from both.
The paint was shut down tonight. The Wolves, when they got there, it was chaos. When they weren't getting there, they were just scared and throwing it out and throwing it away and taking back shots. The paint was like the way that they just, because again, even as enthusiastic as I've been about Denver's competence on defense, that shit ain't got nothing to do with paint protection. So this is a completely different animal we're talking about in terms of when you do break the plane on the perimeter defense, and it's like, nah, kid, you don't want to do that. And then the wing help. These are lengthy guys, man. These guys can bother your shot, bother your vision, get into the passing lanes, muck it up for you, get deflections. It like the way that they couldn't figure out how to get into the lane. And I hesitate to do this because I've been such a Rudy guy all playoffs long and been annoyed by people killing him when he hasn't played, at his very best. But it's going to be tough, man. The lane is going to be tough with Rudy in the game where the Mavs are clearly not scared of him. I thought the Wolves did a good job. Couple of lob plays. One of the first plays of the game, Rudy got Kyrie switched on to him and drew a foul immediately because he was right underneath the basket. They threw it to him and he drew a foul. And I was like, man, it's really cool that Rudy is no longer that Utah guy from 4 years ago who would just get guarded by Pat Beverly. That being said, he allows them the bigs to stay parked in the paint, never have to move because Rudy's never going anywhere. And so I'm wondering how Chris Finch is going to solve that problem as well.
Yeah, if we want to connect the dots of everything you just laid out there, Woz, what the Mavs did with all those things, playing off of Rudy and the structure of their defense, they turned Anthony Edwards into a jump shooter. Yes. And he took a lot of threes, and he seemed pretty willing to do it. And I think by and large, they were pretty decent shots. These weren't bad takes.
Yeah, I would say like 3/4, yeah.
But they're decent takes he was settling for relative to the player that he is and relative to the player that the Timberwolves need him to be. Like
and not always in rhythm.
Yes, that is definitely true. But when you're him and you're seeing the drop or you're seeing multiple layers of defensive coverage, you're seeing someone help off of Rudy, daring whichever Timberwolf to make that pass to Rudy and challenging him to catch it cleanly and then finish before the defense can react. The Mavs clearly got away with a lot of that in this game.
This is the other side of the decision-making stuff with Ant, where it's like, yeah, the threes were there for them, but were they the best shot? And like McDaniels had success early on. He looked like the next face of the league, the next young player who was about to rock it because I think he had 19 points in this game.
Sorry, the next what, Justin?
Face of the league.
Oh, seems like a topical subject at theringer.com lately.
Yes, there is a rankings up if you'd like to look at them. They are not
I need to look back at my grades because I'm like, there's no way I graded these guys in the order that they came out. But that's another topic for another time.
Yeah, I've been fielding lots of questions and queries, let's say, out on the road today about our ranking. People have thoughts.
These are just the results that we came up with. I don't know who you're looking at in order to blame here. I will say the highlight of the individual rankings was giving Tyler Hero a 9 total out of 50. And it was like the absolute bare minimum.
Sorry.
No, I mean,
I'm just talking about as a prospect, man, not as like a right now player. He's a cute enough player right now, but come on.
I will say, just to cross the T's on that, I think the distinction between a lot of those guys was like a fraction of a point, basically.
Got you.
And it also factored in other things like intangibles and like, Luka's histrionics and Some of his injuries based on the lack of conditioning probably dinged him slightly enough to drop him to 4. And that's why he's at 4. But I don't think anybody actually read the rankings, let alone actually went to the website. They just saw the NBA Central aggregation of it, including Damian Lillard, which Rob sent me that link. So we appreciate that. No, but anyway, I do feel like Ant had a good first half. I think he had 5 assists, and it felt like he was doing enough of the in-between passing in order to make things work. It just felt like in that second half, they gunked up, and it helped. I didn't think it helped that the Mavs were also taking off, Rob, where it felt like they tried to catch up with them and match their dynamicism. I almost got it there.
Can you use that in a sentence, please? Country of origin?
I believe Swedish. But yeah, 49 3-pointers for the Wolves as a whole. They typically take 32.7 in the regular season. That's 23rd in the NBA.
That's not
too much.
So here's the thing too, right? One, the Nuggets didn't have a guy they felt comfortable could guard Ant one-on-one. Clearly, they thought Kenny was too small. They felt like AG was too slow. Cool. So what ends up happening is they start over-sending the help, obviously sending the help, meaning Ant could see it coming from a mile away, make a very quick read. Denver's defense is already in rotation. Boom. And also, when you break that plane, it's Jokic, it's Gordon, it's guys back there, but it's like you feel nice about your chances of finishing it. The Wolves were breaking the plane of the defense. But it's just a different reality now against Gafford and Lively, right? It's just a different proposition. And so, I think obviously Ant will, he'll look at the tape. He'll be able to make better adjustments. He'll attack quicker. That was another thing. He was taking way too long to attack sometimes. True. Sometimes he was overpassing. It just is what you run up against an elite defense, because that's what Dallas is somehow right now. And you're a 22-year-old, you make mistakes. But I think he's shown a capacity to learn pretty quickly. Not to say he's going to turn into, a Luka, LeBron or something in terms of diagnosing defenses. But I think he's going to figure some stuff out as the series goes on.
Yeah, we fully expect him to. There are clearly some signs of him showing his age. In particular, 2 cross-court passes he tried to throw that went clear into the second row. And that's the kind of stuff that's tough if you're not literally LeBron James to do, right? Those are hard reads and passes to execute against high-level defenses. But to what you were saying, Woz, it's not just him trying to get into the lane and then beat Gafford and Lively. Oftentimes when he's passing the ball up, as he should, create an advantage and then dish off to the next guy, if the shot wasn't immediately there for, say, Jaden McDaniels, or as Woz dubbed him in our group chat, Clayton McThompson, 6 for 9 from 3 from Jaden McDaniels in this game. Insane stuff.
They were running plays for him to take movement 3-pointers, y'all. Like he was Reggie Miller.
Rightly so. He and Naz Reid hit a bunch of huge shots from 3 that kept the Wolves in this game, fought back and got them leads. Really important offense. But every time they didn't have that, and those players, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, anyone who's not Anthony Edwards, had to put the ball on the floor and drive, they were doing so with PJ Washington and Derek Jones and Josh Green and all these guys just swiping the shit out of the ball. And there were so many drives where guys just lost it. They just lost their dribble on the way to the basket. And this happened to Ant a couple times too. And if that is kind of the battleground for how you create offense, you're really going uphill. Like, you're really going to struggle if you can't find a way to bust through some of that kind of coverage.
Yeah, I mean, we said it all post All-Star break, post deadline. Like, the Mavs defense is legit. And it has shown up time and time again in these postseasons. It's weird to say because it always felt like Luka was a little one-sided, the teams that he was playing on. But, like, they've got some guys that could throw some heft around in a way that, like, honestly, I think they're just a better, more suited defense to be combating what the Wolves bring than even the Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean, it's particularly because their guys can actually freaking go. That's the difference right now. And for me, Luka being able to create advantages just, on the ball from the perimeter, just at the snap of a finger is just different. And he's putting Minnesota in difficult positions. He's putting them in rotation. And that made all the difference in game 1.
Also 3 steals. If we're going to talk about defense, Luka Doncic, huge for that defense.
He's including in the right spot on damn near every possession. Sorry, Rob.
No, including in crunch time, blowing up a lob from Mike Conley to Rudy
That was
Gobert
crazy.
that could have completely changed the outcome of this game.
That was crazy. Yeah, one of those plays that was, it was subtle but very effective. Honestly.
Okay, can we talk about what is subtle and effective? Because I see us getting a lot of mileage out of that phrase over the next couple weeks.
So what are we thinking going into game 2 now? Are there any obvious adjustments that you would think for the Wolves, or anything that like the Mavs would have to do differently here?
One thing I think the Wolves can do differently, and I think looked pretty good in spots and messed up the flow of the Mavs defense a little bit, was some of the big pick and roll stuff. When Towns and Gobert would run pick and roll together, it seemed to kind of disorient Dallas. And they didn't do it very much, and you understand why they might not. But selectively, if you can get into that, I think it disorients Dallas enough in their rotations and in all that kind of swiping and help that you can get some good offense out of it.
I think the Mavs will be smart because I think at some point Ant's going to find some matchups that he feels comfortable against and start exploiting those matchups on the perimeter, try to get some Kyrie on him, try to get some of these other guys onto him. The Mavs, there was that period in the beginning of the fourth quarter where Cat and Ant were on the bench. At some point there, it was like 6-2. And I think Minnesota was like kind of feeling themselves like, oh, okay, yeah, we can steal some minutes off of this. We're up 5 points. And then, it was a couple of Rudy got the ball and he did his Rudy Edwards Scissorhands routine where he barely caught it and then threw a rock at the rim and it was terrible. Then there was another horrible possession. And then the Mavs scored twice on that. And then when Ant and Cat came back on 2 of those possessions, they ran like a hybrid sort of 2-3 zone almost. And they confused the hell out of them, got 2 more stops and scored again, right? So I think that's going to be where it starts getting interesting, where they start, okay, Ant's feeling comfortable against his matchup or Cat's feeling comfortable against his matchup. Let's throw a curveball of some type of zone or some type of hybrid of a man in the zone, what we used to call red in high school. I think when Jason Kidd...
We get it. You played basketball, Woz. Come on.
Whatever, I'm not doing that. It's just Jason Kidd, man, defensively is so goddamn creative, y'all. That's what I'm really looking forward to, man.
Yeah, game 1s are all about seeing what you can get away with. Who do we not have to guard? Which role players off the bench can we steal minutes from and play? And sometimes that it looks like Luke Cornett playing in the Eastern Conference Finals when realistically maybe he shouldn't be.
Jesus.
And in this series, this was I would say a best case Kyle Anderson game in a lot of ways. He went 5 for 8 from the field. And let me tell you, when he loads up that corner 3 against a Mavs defense that is not guarding him whatsoever, it's the most dramatic thing that's happening in that arena all night. And this was a great banger of a game. But the silence that sets out as people wait to see that trebuchet cock back and release is just incredible.
Rob, it's like everybody else is playing with like M16s and this guy's chucking a spear. It's really crazy to watch him shoot that shot. God.
Maybe a musket. There's a lot of like gunpowdering and you got to clean it and it's just a lot of logistics.
The stick in inside the barrel right after every single usage. Fact.
Listen, I made it to that episode of Shogun, by the way, so I get that one.
Congratulations.
The canon.
We're gonna get you watching TV on a regular basis sometime going forward, Justin. But
there you go.
I think that's where it gets tricky for Minnesota is they're probably going to have to tighten some of those things up in terms of who they are playing and when. And these guys are already going hard for pretty serious minutes. So, Nas is clearly going to have to play a lot. Nickeil Alexander-Walker did not really have it offensively in this game, but is going to have to be a factor, if only because you want someone else to throw at Kyrie in particular. Where that leaves Kyle Anderson, I don't know. What that means for the starting lineup, and like Mike Conley is already playing on a sore Achilles from the last series. These guys just came off of a 7-game affair against the defending champs. It would be understandable if they were a little run down. That's what the playoffs are all about. But you got to run through it, and you got to find ways to overcome it.
The only thing that would make me go ahead, Just. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think you keep going back to slow-mo as long as he's going to keep playing like this. He was legitimately impactful in that first half, and part of that was because they probably weren't giving as much attention, and he was able to find the seams because the seams were big as shit, let's be honest. But they're already going 8 deep in this game. There really isn't much more to turn from unless you really want to turn some of these Gobert minutes over to Reed just to get a little bit more offensive juice there. Because like, I don't know if you want to circle back to the Gobert conversation. That's always been my thing with him. I'm kind of like a moderate Gobert hater. Like some of the personality stuff can be a little wearing, but like my thing is like, he has to be dominant on defense because of what he lacks offensively. And I think you're right earlier when he's like, yeah, he's cleaned up some of that stuff, but there's still a lot of fumbles, a lot of flip shots where it's like, what are you doing here exactly? And he's just
he made a soundboard shuffle in the game of his life. So
you're damn right. That was unfucking believable. But I think that would be the big chess move because they do seem to be more dynamic with Reed out there as the extra stretch. But I don't know. That feels a little abrupt to do in game 2.
Oh, for sure.
Here's my thing as somebody who, would pretty confidently pick the Wolves, albeit in like 7 games or whatever, long ass series. All the variant shit went their way in terms of the 3-point luck and the lack thereof completely on the Mavs side. And outside of that, in like the regular play, the Mavs seem to have their stuff together in a way more coordinated and organized manner on both ends, quite frankly, than the Wolves did. I thought the Wolves didn't really have a Luka plan. I thought the Wolves on offense looked lost. And so that gives me pause, but stranger things have happened in these postseasons alone.
Yeah, and this was a very tight game. If Kyrie Irving goes 10 of 23 instead of 12 of 23, on the hardest shots taken in this game, the Wolves win. And we're having a very different conversation. So yeah, a lot of things are going to swing. The 3-point shooting is going to swing. The role players clearly are going to swing pretty hard from game to game. Even Luka's shot making from the mid-range could easily rim in or out. Those are those kinds of exact one-on-one opportunities you were talking about, Justin, that you want to dare him into. And he made enough of them to beat you, but he might not always. And so I don't even think Minnesota came into this with a bad game plan. I just think they need to problem solve Dallas's defense a little bit more effectively.
Yeah. I think drive the ball. I think if you're Minnesota, you're like, Ant, get downhill as much as possible. And even Towns, like, especially when the 3-pointer wasn't going tonight, like his most impactful plays were coming off unblocked and put back dunks. I think it got called back, but it's just like, this guy's a massive force if he wants to be. And if they're not going to put a body on him, he should leverage that. It's almost like they don't use their heft in the way that you would expect a team with basically 3 centers playing it a lot of times. It's more of a finesse 3-point shooting team. And they let Ant be the battering ram there. But it's just like, dog, just like get into the mud and do some of the dirty work. And I think it's going to pay dividends. But like, I mean, the story of Ant's postseason thus far is that he's starting to not only see more attention, but you're seeing defenses make him think more. And so this really is kind of an amp, like how far along are you? We've gotten to the point where like the Jordan comps are like coming and they don't seem absurd, but it's just like, this is your crucible right now. We're going to see how far along you are. And that's really tough for a 22-year-old. As much as that's an excuse, like that's what he's playing like in a game like this.
Yeah, a matchup like this is a progress report for Anthony Edwards. And I hear what you're saying, Justin, about wanting to get downhill and wanting to kind of get in the mud with these guys. In theory, I don't know that you want to get in the mud with the Mavs. This is an incredibly physical team now, and a team that will beat you up the more that you drive. And clearly, the Wolves need to change their shot diet fundamentally. They need to be attacking more. They need to be settling less. But it's easier said than done with the way that this Mavs group is defending right now.
Yeah. Should we flip to the East now just to check in? Because you're probably listening to this Thursday morning. I would assume most people were going to get a game 2. This was kind of the opposite experience.
Before we move on, can I throw out one thing, which is at this game, I saw some fans wearing bring ya ass headbands. And I would like to know where these are available and if they can be sent to us. That seems like something we should have in our collection.
Oh, I definitely think it's something you guys should have in your collection.
There we go. The synergy between your bits and Anthony Edwards' bits is really beautiful.
We're both taking off this postseason, one might say.
People are saying.
That's a really good idea. Live show? What? Bring your ass headbands? Let's talk about this later. No, game 2, Eastern Conference Finals. What an absolute slog this game was. Well, first of all, I have to say it's quite funny because after our discussion in last pod or 2 pods ago, whenever it was, I'm now being accused as a Celtics hater, which I find quite hilarious. But games like this, Rob, I definitely understand why people, including me, including all of us, probably are a little skeptical when the Celtics play like this. Game was a mess.
They win games like this without playing well. And that's a Rorschach test for you as a basketball fan and person and watcher. Like, is that a good thing? Because they're so talented, they're able to overcome these sorts of bad performances. Is it a weird thing that they have a hard time stringing together wholly dominant games? My feeling on it, as long as the wins keep coming, it's really a non-problem. But the wins almost slipped away from them in this. And frankly, they should have lost this game if not for Tyrese Halliburton giving away basically 3 separate possessions in crunch time between the fourth and overtime.
I find myself like, and I'm not trying to zig when everybody's zagging here. Part of it, I think, is they've played the fucking Indiana Pacers, a beat up Cavs team, a beat up Heat team. Like at a certain point, like it's not like they've had to dig deep for any of this stuff, right? And so
those teams don't need their best. They don't require their best by any stretch of the imagination.
And so I'm not surprised human nature has kicked in and they haven't played like their lives are on the line against, mediocre competition. Like compared to what the playoff level has been all across the board. Like these teams have been mediocre. I'm not really that mad that the Celtics haven't been smoking them by 30. However, the Indiana thing that I think is indicative of something that might crop up and be a problem perhaps in the NBA Finals is that they play this like, I don't want to call it robotic, but it's like, this is what we do. We try to get threes. We try to shoot threes. As soon as the 3 is there, just take the 3. Take the 3. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. We're playing our way, blah, 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 blah. When it's just like, yo, the Pacers want to play speedball. Why do you have to play that with them? Why? Why do you have to prove that we don't have to adjust? We can just show up and do that. Stop doing that. The Pacers employ 3 backcourt guys who are 6'3", not 200 pounds. Between the 3 of them, on 6'3" and under 200 pounds. Why aren't you guys just being like, yo, Jason Tatum, I'm bigger than these dudes. Jaylen Brown, who does a better job of this, I will say, I'm bigger than these dudes. We need to play in the paint. We need to scrap this 3-point shit. We need to beat these fucking people up. Like, that's my problem with the Celtics. The one-track mindness of how they play just gets on my nerves, bro.
I think it's 2 things. I think it's the Celtics allowed and tend to allow this postseason the other team to dictate the terms of play. And they were playing the Pacers game pretty much from jump. And to do that now in the Eastern Conference Finals feels a little bit like the clock is ticking at a certain point. You need to be the ones that assert yourself, especially in the first 2 games at home where they've been quite dicey. 2, it's just the process stuff that worries you, maybe not in this series, but in a more competitive series, maybe in the NBA Finals when they get there. And the big thing is, yes, the threes, which they settle for constantly, including when it's like an Al Horford, who like, yes, the shots are there and Al has a history of making shots, but it's just like, how many times you're going to do that and miss before you actually change what you're doing? And 2, it's just like not having Kristaps in there. 2 off of 2, I guess. I'm at number 3. Well, you guys get it. It's also Al and the bigs being such a letdown with Kristaps not being there. I mean, we talked about it all season. Kristaps was kind of the skeleton key that unlocked this team. And you're seeing how thin the bench is at center. And they're making do. But as much as Doris Burke, who I love, was talking up Al as a person, as if he's like the second coming of Mahatma Gandhi, like at a certain point, we need to be open and honest about the fact that he was getting eaten alive. And this isn't the first time this postseason. And like,
oh my God,
the only other option that Maz is willing to play is Cornette, who is way worse than that. And so if you're not going to be creative with the lineups and play more small ball, this is who they are. And so like all these things collide, Rob, and it's just like, yeah, they won, but God damn, it never feels as satisfying as you'd like it to.
Maybe not, but I do want to stop the hand wringing a little bit. They did win. They stole this game, and Tatum and Brown played well enough. Like they did get to their strengths. They did get to their stuff. Brown looked outright dominant at points in this game, and Tatum, even though he missed what would have been, I believe, a game tying 3 down the stretch, came huge in overtime. Like they delivered in crunch time in the ways that they need to deliver. And they did do some of the things we're talking about. Maybe they didn't get to the basket aggressively enough, but Jrue Holiday was putting Tyrese Halliburton into the stanchion and working his way inside in what turned out to be,
best
I believe,
game of his career.
Yeah, basically, I think his season high,
Celtics career.
season high regular season or playoffs for scoring 28 points for Jrue Holiday. That's pretty amazing. The Horford concerns are real, and this is not a good matchup for him. And you could see it in the way that Boston basically scrammed him out of playing pick and roll defense.
Dude, he was so thirsty to stay in the lane, and Indiana was like, oh yeah, let's just find Al Horford and just destroy him. Get open threes off of it. Get completely wide open free throw line jumpers. And it's like, yo, Joe Mazzulla, make this dude get beat off the dribble out in space 1 or 2 times in a row.
Yeah.
Like, show me that you're willing to do something different, dude. And then, okay, maybe we're scrambling behind the play. Maybe we're doing something, but like just doing the same exact coverage every single time. I mean, Nembhard looking like a freaking genius out there. He looking like Steve Nash carving these dudes up. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Nembhard and McConnell looked a little too good out there in terms of just their ability to navigate within the defense. You got to clean that stuff up. The good news is the Celtics are exactly the kind of team that you would expect to clean it up. And they have shown that they can, and they will, and they have in previous matchups,
and Holiday, Jrue Holiday actually lived up to his rep on defense. He clamped the hell up
I was
on
waiting until we
Tyrese
got here.
Halliburton in the second half. He smoked him in the second half for sure.
So I want to pass along a theory I've been thinking of because Waz is constantly bringing up Jrue Holiday, both publicly and privately in the group chat, if you don't mind me revealing. I almost feel like we have to start thinking of Jrue Holiday not as the player he was earlier in his career, like the pick and roll dynamo, or even like the Bucks version. Like, to me, he is guard Aaron Gordon for this team. And when you look at him like that, as just like a big, physical, stout, mobile defender who might hit some shots here and there. And like, obviously the ball handling bar in the NBA Jam bars is turned way up, and like the rim finishing is turned way down from Gordon, but that's kind of who he is. And when you take that into effect, like then you start to recognize like some of the brilliant stuff he does. Like, obviously he was a complete player in this game, like just absolutely a monster.
Made his
and
threes. It was great.
Yeah.
And you saw that at the tail end of the previous series where they really made intentional within the offense to go to him and play the mismatches. And I almost feel like he is turning into somewhat of like the go-to mismatch buster for this team. But like, I think like he is the Gordon for this team. And I think then everything starts to make a little bit more sense from him. And maybe I hope, Waz, you could be a little more charitable.
No. All I'm saying is, look, don't get cooked by Jimmy Butler. Right? Don't monopolize possessions in key possessions with step back threes. Now, if you monopolize in a possession to put TJ McConnell in his place and Nembhard, make him look like the little guy that he is, and Halliburton, who's been a soft-ass defender his whole career, if you monopolize the possessions to do that, you know what, Jrue Holiday, I'm with you. I'll get a Jrue Holiday jersey. But some of the through the legs, four shuffles to the step back three that's 23 feet away, and it just clanks off the backboard. I'm not here for that.
Jrue Holiday jerseys? Is that an idea? At least for Waz.
For some of us, yeah, for some of us, perhaps. I'm an adult man, and you already made me wear a jersey once.
You were so, I don't know if we talked about this in the pod. Rob was so mad that he had to wear a jersey.
Yeah, he was pissed about rocking a jersey.
It's not my thing.
Yeah.
But I think we're zeroing in on a lot in this game did break right for the Celtics in a way that forecasts that this should be a very easily navigable matchup for them. Jrue playing this well is a huge lift. The Stars being able to get to the shots that they want even if they didn't get to the ones that we might want them to take, is obviously a good thing. They forced a lot of turnovers in this game and made Indiana look really sloppy with their offense for portions of it. So you can see the way that this thing is coming together. The questions are just about the lineup and who's playing. And this is something that you raised previously, Justin, in terms of them playing small ball. Indiana has now basically invited them to do it by not really playing a backup center toward the back half of this game. Obi Toppin was effectively the backup 5. If that's how Indy is playing, there's no reason that you can't play basically whoever you want as a backup 5.
5 minutes. Just 5 minutes of small ball.
That's it.
Why are we getting Cornet minutes? They dissipated down the stretch in this game, but it's just like he's not it. Joe Mazzulla. Like, let's just move off of that. At this point, I'd play Hauser more just to get some more wings in the rotation there. But is there anything like the Pacers should be thinking differently? I mean, they practically won this game until they fumbled it all away.
Keep pushing the pace. Keep speeding Boston up. Encourage them to take these quick shots. They're not used to playing at this pace, so they're not as conditioned for it. Jaylen Brown even admitted it after the game. He was like, yeah, it was pretty up and down. I was a little bit winded at the end of this game. No fucking shit. You don't play like this. So, like, yeah, keep trying to push pace. Make it into speed ball. I think that's their only chance, honestly. Like, if the Celtics make this a methodical sort of game where they're getting that way to hell back on defense, buckling down, getting into their matchups defensively, making sure Jrue is putting the screws to the head of the snake, excuse me. I think they're beating these guys up, but if they try to do the finesse, we're going to play up and down, we can do to have the full court track meet. All right, watch your ass.
Yeah, I thought some of the ways in which the Pacers sped things up, the Celtics were able to match pretty well. This is a team in Boston that can run, as you're saying, that has the athleticism to run. They're just not quite used to that life in the way that the Pacers are. And so there were times where Boston pushed and Indy's transition defense had no shot. Or there were possessions where Indiana, as we've seen in these playoffs, will try to press full court. And then that ends up with TJ McConnell guarding Jason Tatum, and it's just a walk to the basket for a layup. So there's low-hanging fruit there for Boston, but they do have to be very mindful of what we've been saying up front in this conversation, which is, how are you setting the terms of engagement for this game? You can run with them at times, and you can pick those spots, and you can be opportunistic, but you need to also take the Pacers out of what they want to do, and you need to instill some sense of order over what this series is going to be.
The Pacers took 3 free throws. 3 free throw attempts in an entire regulation. So before overtime.
Yeah.
I think they took 10 total in the entire game. And on the one hand,
the scrawnier team.
That is the Pacers' problem, which they surely will get more than 3 in this next game. But this is how they play. They're more perimeter offense, more running gun sort of offense. But that also speaks to maybe the lack of physicality on Boston's side, where it's just like, let's be a little bit more of a thumper, take some cues from maybe the Mavs and the Wolves over on the other side of the bracket, and just like, let's see you lay the wood early and often. And that is one of my criticisms of even like Jrue. Like, some of these guys are slow starters where they'll turn that stuff on when they need to, but it's typically like third quarter is when Boston really clicks in on most of these games this postseason, where it's just like something about the starts. It's almost like Nuggets-esque, what we saw earlier in the postseason, where it's just like, let's get going into this a little bit sooner.
Yeah, and that's a great team also seeing what it can get away with and just what level of respect an opponent deserves. And right now, the level of respect is we're playing Luke Cornet 13 minutes. And I recognize that the Celtics don't exactly have a deep bench of alternatives if they're not playing Cornet. Peyton Pritchard did not cover himself in glory in this game. Sam Hauser has pretty clear limitations. Those are really the only guys that Joe Mazzulla has been comfortable playing right now, other than Kristaps Porzingis. So if that doesn't change, those guys will probably have to be part of the rotation in some meaningful way. But I don't know. Like, I think you have to take the Pacers more seriously, at least with your defense, than the Celtics did in the first half. And we know they can do it. That's frankly the only reason why we ask it.
Having said all that, still think the Celtics are going to win it all.
It's hard. I can't fault you for that. They're going to win this series.
They're going to get there.
Yeah.
I don't have much worry about that. I mean, also, I expect at this point the Mavs Wolves might go 6 or 7. Like, if any team shows up with 7 guys they can play in the NBA Finals, like it's going to be a godsend. Like we did a story on theringer.com this week, Zach Cram did, about the easiest path to the finals. And first I should mention, when you don't adjust things based on injuries, just based on pure win average, the Denver Nuggets had the 3rd easiest path in the past 40 years. Just going to note that, especially for our friend Rob, who completely biffed that earlier. Just saying. But the Celtics.
What did I do?
You biffed it?
What did I biff?
You were pushing back on the idea that the Nugs did not have an easy path to the finals last year.
There are no easy paths to the finals.
Oh, give me a fucking break. Anyway, the Celtics, on the other hand, when you adjust for injuries, it's actually worse. So it has been a cakewalk, and it might continue to be, but I still think the Celtics.
Yeah, I frankly, I know it's something that we will discuss to
death. You would be a true coward to switch up on the Celtics now. As much crowing you've been doing all season. The nerve of this guy to pretend he's being brave right now.
Oh,
I'm sticking to my Celtics pick.
Wait, hold on. I did the crowing.
Sticking to my Celtics pick.
Okay.
In a hushed tone.
I wish we had a.
You ain't switching it up right now.
I wish we had like a one shining moment where we just had all of Waz's Nuggets just like absolute bullshit. Most
That's
conditioned athlete, Nikola Jokic, Peyton Watson. I could come up with an entire like
Peyton
30-minute documentary on this shit.
You should have played more.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have made the difference.
Now we're all getting into the mud together. Now we're just wrestling.
There we go.
I can't wait.
Let's wrap it there. Remember, live show, June 18th. Go to theringer.com/events. Get those tickets. We'll be doing the show on June 18th, I believe, at 8 p.m. Pacific, doors at 7. So check that out. Also watch us on YouTube. But we'll be back on Saturday as usual. I think we did later Sunday last time, going back to Saturday this time. Thank you to Isaiah Blakely. Thank you to Ben Cruz. Thank you to Steady Eddie Ocampo. We'll see you then.